Welcome back. This is part 2 of the Forms workflow video. In this video, we'll add new statuses and transition buttons so that we can control who can do what and when. Without a workflow, everyone can potentially see all forms and issues, which normally we don't want. The workflow statuses give us a clear delineation between stages in the life of a form or issue. And the transitions provide a mechanism to automate certain tasks, such as assignment and changing values within the form itself. Let's start by adding a new status to our current basic workflow that we were working on in the previous video. Click Add Status. Give the status a name. This can be changed later if you need to. Our starting status is currently open, and I will leave it as that. Each status that we have must have a corresponding state. The states are fixed, they are draft, open and closed, but the statuses can be configured as we're doing here. I normally give most of the statuses the open state, and then for the final status such as resolved or void, I would set as a closed state, and then draft is just used as that initial state that we talked about previously. This section here gives us the opportunity to disable certain controls within the form when the form is in this status. I'm going to disable subject and discipline. You'll notice in here that it's a list of bindings, not labels for the controls. So it pays to create sensibly named bindings when you're designing your forms in the first place. The last box here lets us restrict the forms from the view of certain people. For example, we might not want our client to see any issues until they are resolved. So we could deselect the client group from here, and then any members of that group would not see the forms that are currently in this status. Now that's complete, we can save and we can revisit the workflow diagram. And when we look at this, we can see our two original statuses of open and closed as they were before, and the new status that we've added, but there's no arrows to it. So this means there's no way to transition to this status at the moment. So let's do something about that. Logically, the user will want to go from probably the open stage to the review stage. So let's add a transition button from open. Firstly, give this button a name. This is the text that will appear actually on the button, so keep it short and sweet. I'm going to use send for review. Next is status transition. So this sets where the transition will take place. Think about those arrows on the workflow diagram. In this case, we want it to go from open to review. Do we want to capture a comment when this transition is used? We can choose none, optional or required. And do we want to notify anyone when this transition is used? As we're going to a review stage, it might be an idea to notify the reviewing team. It might also be useful to notify the creator of this instance of the form. Permissions are set by capability. The capabilities that a user role has is defined at project level within the Manage Roles page as we're looking at here. Form-specific permissions can also be set. They're set here, what we're looking at now, and these permissions actually override project level permissions. So project level permissions would apply to all forms, but if there's a specific form where we want even more stringent rules for access, we can add that on top. As we're going to a review stage, it would seem sensible to require slightly elevated permissions to use this transition. So I will choose Assign, and there's also an override that allows the assigned person to use the transition regardless of their permission settings. Now it's quite likely that you haven't thought this hard about form permissions at this point, so it's fine just to leave it as it is and come back to it later. Finally, we can change one or more properties or values of the form itself. We can change who is the assigned person or role. We can change the description. We can change the due date. And this is the current date plus X days. So today is the 12th. If I add 7 days, then it will be due on the 19th. Also, then we can change the value for the issue, discipline, and the subject. Once we're happy with the settings, click Save, and we can see the new transition listed as a button below Close on the Open status. So now there will be two routes a user can take from the Open status. Let's look at the workflow diagram again, and let's look at how this manifests within a form instance. notice that close is the default button. I prefer it to be the other way around, so let's change the order of these buttons and notice that whatever is top of the list is the default button. I also need to add at least one button to the review status, otherwise the user is going to get to that status and then they won't be able to get back again. So we don't want people getting stuck in that workflow. You might have also seen the colors as well. So these colors are visible within the design review app and within the PDF markup app. So you can easily see the status of issues within the model or within the PDF. And finally, I've mentioned templates before, and I can't stress enough the benefit of creating a template project and creating master form definitions and workflows within this master template project for reuse in future projects. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer.